Hi, I'm Riley, and I'm the Communications Director for Plan to Eat.
And I'm Roni. I am the Customer Experience Director and the lead content creator for Plan to Eat.
Today we want to share how we create a meal plan. What goes through our mind from recipe to shopping list to shopping to eating, like what goes through our mind, how do we create the whole process, just giving you guys a little insight into what we do to help maybe make it a little bit easier for you.
Yeah. So I would say that, so Riley and I have done a video previously about how we kind of decide what recipes to put in our recipe book, but just as a little overview of that, what I personally do is before I import a recipe, I make sure and look at the ingredients in the recipe. I usually don't make recipes that are incredibly complicated. I like simpler recipes. I feel like I'm a better cook when I make a simpler recipe. And like a complicated recipe can be fun every once in a while, but for the majority of my meal planning, I choose simple recipes that aren't hours long. And so when I actually go to create my meal plan, I majorly plan for dinners because we often use a lot of leftovers for lunches, and breakfasts are just kind of like automated. We do the same thing all the time for breakfast. So when I go to create my meal plan, I basically am on my planner and I will use my search and filtering options. I often plan majorly from the website rather than the app. And so, I'll use the search and filtering options in the sidebar on the calendar, and I'll choose my main course, and I will usually I'll kind of like check around my house and see, like, do we already have some chicken? Do I already have bratwurst? Are there any leftover onions or other vegetables that we have that I can kind of include in these recipes for the week? And so I'll use my search and filtering options to kind of find recipes that already include some things that we have. And then I also will just think about, like, what sounds good this week? What's the recipe that we haven't had in a while? Or, like, what's a flavor that we haven't had in a little while? I just only cook for me and my husband, so I have less people to please in the meal planning that I do. So majorly it's just my dinners that are on my planner. If I need a reminder of, like, we do need, like some more sourdough bread, or we do need some more eggs or something, I will add that to my planner. But not as often. So then I'll go to my shopping list and I'll get my shopping list on the correct date range for the week that I just planned for. And I'll go through and mark off all the things that we do already have that I don't actually need to purchase. And then I'll go to my staples list and kind of do a search around my house to be like, we also need some toilet paper, or we do also need eggs or sourdough bread, things like that. And I'll just kind of add those in bulk to my shopping list to make sure that we're not forgetting things in the weekly meal plan. So in general, I plan for a week at a time, and the actual meal planning is mostly focused around the dinners because, like I said, we often use the leftovers as lunches. So something else that I'll do is when I'm on my planner, I'll make sure that all the serving sizes are set to something more than just 2, usually more actually along the lines of like 6 to 8, so that we can have lots of leftovers because we really like leftovers at our house. So
I actually don't think I know how to cook for 2 people.
I
mean, we're just 2 people and I have a child, like a baby, but I have a really hard time cooking for
actual
just
2 people.
Yeah.
Awesome. What's your process?
Yeah, so it's pretty similar to the way yours is. I typically plan more for dinners than any other meal. Occasionally on the weekends, if I'm planning for a lunch or a breakfast, it's usually the weekends. That's when we have pancakes, or that's when we have waffles or homemade something that takes a little more effort than here's some scrambled eggs or toast or whatever it is that we're having for breakfast, because we kind of tend to do the same things. We eat similar things for breakfast every day, and we do try to keep a lot of things, not a lot of things on hand, but extras on hand. So if we decide we don't want eggs, there's yogurt or something along those lines. So on the weekends, I'll plan for breakfast and dinner, maybe a lunch here and there if I find a recipe where I'm like, this would be really good, but it's not a dinner recipe. It's more of a lunch, and I'm gonna make this for lunch. Reuben sandwiches or something like that. If I'm gonna work a little harder on something, it's a little bit more complicated than just a regular lunch that we do, which is oftentimes also leftovers. But otherwise, just regular in the week, I plan dinners out. And I look through my recipe book. Often I'll just use the filters and search for a protein that we already have at home. Or if we've been eating a lot of the same proteins, then I will search for something different. Like today we're going to have this as our main, and I look for that, and then I'll buy that ingredient if we don't already have it. We do shop at like Costco or a Sam's Club kind of situation, and so I will try to, we have bulk things in our freezer that I can pull from. But if we don't have it, if we want to branch out and eat something a little different, I'll just search for some other thing. Or if I'm just feeling like I want to eat a different type of meal, like Indian cuisine or Italian, I'll search by cuisine type and find something that looks really good. And that's a little bit more outside of our norm of recipes that we choose to eat every week. And I try to mix it up. I kind of get bored, and I get bored of things, but I also get into ruts, and I like to make the same things all the time, especially if we're like, oh, this is really good. Let's do this again. But we don't have like a Monday we eat tacos and Tuesday we eat lasagna, and we don't have any kind of like set meal plan. So it is kind of random what I choose, but it's usually based around ingredients that I either already have on hand or a flavor profile that I'm excited about trying. And I definitely have go-tos. I mean, there's certain things that don't need recipes even that I really like, and I'll just go to the planner and I'll add an ingredient note, like there are these tacos that we eat, and I don't really need a recipe for it anymore. I've made them enough, and I'll just add the 4 or 5 ingredients that I know I need to purchase as an ingredient note, and then I also am reminded that's what we're having for dinner that night because I know what those ingredients are for. So that's kind of how I go from the recipe book to the planner. I typically plan from the planner, and I just look at the sidebar of recipes. If I find a recipe while I'm searching the web and I'm like, oh, that looks really good, I'll just add it to my planner and immediately add it to my recipe book and immediately add it to my planner just as I find it, because I'm like, oh, I don't want to forget that I imported this. This looks really yummy. I'm going to go ahead and add it to my planner. And then from there, I move to the shopping list. And like Roni, I shop at home first, and I remove all the things that I know I already have. Salt, baking powder, pepper, garlic, things that we always have on hand. And then from there, I have a consolidated list of things that I need. From that point, I usually will move things around. If I need this from Costco, I move that ingredient there, and I move things around so I know when and where I'm purchasing it, because I don't usually go to the grocery store and Costco on the same day. I usually do those on different days. It might be more efficient to do them on the same day, but I just don't have the time usually to go to all the stores. It's usually more like quick pick up my groceries, and then when I have more time, I go to Costco because it's a little bit more of an involved process. Yeah. So one thing that I do during the week when I'm when I'm cooking recipes is if I run out of ingredient, like yesterday I ran out of Dijon mustard. I immediately opened my Plant Eat app and I added Dijon mustard to my shopping list. It's not really something that lives on my staples list. It's just, it is kind of a staple, but it's just not something that qualifies for my staples list. And so I just go ahead and open it up and I add Dijon mustard. So I know that the next time I'm shopping, it's already on the list and I don't have to think about it. And I find if I don't do it immediately, then I don't buy it. Shopping at home, I do that and I still will forget. And so the process that works best for me is just, I'm running out of it right now. I'm going to immediately add it to my shopping list. Super easy to open up the app and add 1 or 2 items at a time. And that's typically how I plan for it. I plan for my week, plan my ingredients and all the things. I'm trying to think if there's anything extra that I do on like a week where something's different, because things always come up, But I think that's pretty much my basic step-by-step process. If you need help figuring out what recipe to choose because you're really stuck and you have, 100 recipes in your recipe book, you've been using Plant Eat for 3 months and you've imported 100 recipes, we have this awesome feature called the random recipe button.
Yeah.
And you can click that and a random recipe will appear. Super handy and it's something that works awesome.
Yeah.
Now, sometimes you're going to end up with something like brownies for dinner, and obviously that's not going to work, but you can keep clicking it until you find something that looks really good. And then
you can also use the sort and filtering options with it. So if you are specifically planning for dinner and you don't want to get your dessert recipes in there, just, use your category and put in the main ingredient or put in the main course there.
Yeah.
And
and search by that. Yeah, no, it's good. I forgot about that part. So you won't end up with brownies if you use it like that. Anything else? Can you think of anything else that you do that might help people get started with their own meal planning?
I think that my meal planning is I'm pretty simplistic in the way that I use Plant Eat. Like I said, I only plan for my husband and I only cook for my husband and I. So that narrows down some of the constraints that a lot of people have. But I also think that I I don't ever hardly do bulk shopping because we have a small home, we have a small kitchen. So like whereas Riley might have to move things around to different stores, like I basically just only shop at the same one store. And, you know, there's pros and cons to that. It makes my shopping list like a little less lengthy. I don't have to look at different stores necessarily to figure out what I'm buying where. But at the same time, I maybe shop a little more frequently than some other people do because we don't always have things in stock because we don't have any place to put it if I did buy it.
How often do you shop per week?
I probably shop about once a week.
Yeah.
Sometimes I have to go to the store a second time to, like the other day I had to go to the grocery store just to buy like limes because I had a marinade that called for limes, but my husband had actually used the limes for something else the night before, not realizing that I needed them for a recipe. So things like that will happen, but for the majority of my shopping, I pretty much get it done in one shopping trip a week. And that's a big change for us. Before I started using Plan to Eat, I was at the grocery store every other day probably, just not knowing what we were going to have for dinner. So I would just have to go to the store randomly to buy lots of different things.
Yeah. My goal is to shop once every 10 days.
Oh, yeah.
That's my goal. And I go to Costco or a big box store like that maybe once a month or once every 6 weeks. We don't shop there as often as other people that I know just because we aren't eating the food as fast as some people are they have more kids or more people living in their household. And so I try to go once every 6 weeks, and it's usually because I need a few things that are very specific, and then I end up with some extra things. That's not always a bad thing because it's something that I can store for the future. But my goal is every 10 days. I do plan on a weekly basis, and it usually overflows, or we'll do leftovers, or I'll put together some more like creative meals in those days where we don't shop. My husband works a shift schedule, and so though I do plan for 5 meals at a time, sometimes there's overflow because he's not home every night for dinner and that kind of thing. So, but 10 days is good. It's usually really once a week, but 10 days is my goal. 10 days is my goal. So. And when it's great, when it works, it's great.
Yeah.
So
I think though, for getting started with meal planning, a really important thing is just knowing what your family likes to eat and knowing either specific recipes or knowing what kind of flavors and just kind of having those things on hand, because when you first start meal planning, it's really more about getting into the habit of it and just making it something that you remember to do, something that you can put on your to-do list to remember to meal plan and then go grocery shopping. And so it doesn't need to be fancy at first. It just needs to be something that you get in the habit of. And so if you start out for the first couple of weeks and you make the same 5 recipes for 3 weeks in a row, that's fine.
Yeah, you made a meal plan. You stuck to it. That was good.
Yeah, and you probably saved money, and hopefully you had more dinners together with your family.
Yeah, and ultimately that's our hope for you.
Yep.
So, I mean, we're not perfect. We don't want to come across like we are the most perfect meal planners just because we work for Plan to Eat. And now granted, we have the most wonderful tool for meal planning in our back pocket. But I was just telling Ronnie this morning, I have to do that again. I have to meal plan again. It tends to come up really fast sometimes. I'm like, I have to meal plan again. But just it's about a work in progress. We're all work in progress. We're just trying to get better at these little things that make our lives easier.
Yeah. But y'all who have the option to meal plan for a whole month ahead of time because you can store all of these things in your house, you are the lucky ones.
And if you do that, that's amazing. And I bet the load off your plate is just big. Yeah. That's awesome. Yeah.
Well, so if you have any tips, if you're a consistent meal planner and you have any tips for somebody who's getting started with meal planning, we would love to hear about them in the comments below.
If you have any questions about meal planning and want advice from us, then also add those to the comment section. We'd love to help you.
Yeah. And if you're enjoying our videos, please subscribe to our channel, and we're putting out more videos all the time.
Yeah.
Thanks for watching.